Step into the world of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Where the essence of entrepreneurship is unraveled in its most authentic form. Stas Balanevsky serves as your guide on this journey of discovery and inspiration. In each episode, Stas brings together entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. It's not just about their victories, but more about the resilience and adaptability they've shown in the face of adversity. These narratives are more than just stories. They are lessons in courage, determination, and the relentless pursuit of success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, dreaming of launching your first venture, or an established business leader seeking new perspectives, Founders Dinner is your invitation to explore the transformative power of entrepreneurship. And now, without further ado, let's welcome the host of Founders Dinner, Stas Balanevsky.
Welcome to the Founders Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Stas Balanevsky. I have the pleasure of having Garrett Delph as my guest today. Garrett, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Stas. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me, by the way.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is great. We together, all of us should be able to give the budding entrepreneurs and the actual entrepreneurs of this world a really great gift. It'll take us a couple of years to get there, and I'm just psyched that you're on the journey with me.
Fantastic.
So without further ado, let's start with you and your entrepreneurial journey. Can you give me a sense of where you've been, where you are, and where you're headed?
You bet. You bet. Well, as you said, my name's Garrett Delph. A little bit about me personally. I'm a proud husband and father of 4 kids. They span the spectrum of 14 to 25.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Really great. Having babies is one of the best things ever. So anyways, there's that. I've been building businesses for just over 25 years now. Currently, I'm the founder and CEO of a business called Clarity Ops, LLC. And primarily, I empower founders and CEOs of companies that are doing roughly $5 million in recurring revenue per year or more to optimize their operations, align their teams, and create a people-first culture that drives sustainable growth through the power of frameworks. I really do believe that great companies are first and foremost built by great people. And
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think part of the critical part to the great, quote unquote, great, is you must be able to define what great is in order for it to have the strength and power that it needs to get the business where it wants to go.
Amen, brother. For sure. As I'm an EOS implementer, and process is certainly one of our 6 key components. And the people component, of course, is the second component, with having the right people in the right seats. And part of that is understanding what great looks like.
Yeah. Appreciate that. For sure I do. And I value that.
It's funny. We have, there's another EOS implementer here in Buffalo, and he's a good friend, and we're doing a talk soon. And one of the concepts of EOS is called GWC, get it, want it, and capacity to do it.
Okay.
And we've been spitballing ideas to come up with a really funny kind of way to illustrate that. And what we came up with was the accountability chart sheet for a lap dog.
Okay.
With the 5 bullets of accountability of what a lap dog needs to be. And then we went through with get it, want, and capacity to do it. And of course, the Bichon Frise is it gets it, it wants it, and it has the capacity to do that because it's just this little love bug of a dog.
Yeah.
A Labrador Retriever gets it, wants it, but doesn't quite have the capacity to be the lap dog because my Labrador is 95 pounds. And then you look at a Belgian Malinois, and it doesn't get it, it doesn't want it, and it doesn't have the capacity to be a lap dog. That's just a meat missile.
Yes.
And they could all be great dogs.
They totally could be. But I think that integrates nicely with something I heard you say a few minutes ago, which is right seats, right butts, right seats, skills, absolutely. Alignment with role requirement. Getting those right, and that is part art, part science. I'm sure we probably both agree with that.
Oh,
But
oh my gosh, absolutely. And was it Einstein that said if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will forever feel like a failure?
great, man.
Right. I mean,
I
it's
love it.
the exact.
Can I add more? I mean,
Yeah,
and if along the analogy, and if you try to cut a tree down with a bat, you're also likely to feel like a failure.
for sure. I love that. It's funny. I have a client, they build swimming pools. And I said, listen, I could build a pool with a soup spoon. It just
Yeah,
take me a little
that's right.
longer.
That's right, man.
Right. Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
So how'd you get started in this whole entrepreneurial thing? You've been at it for 25 years. What was day zero?
Yeah, day zero was coming off of 4 years on my second corporate America tour of duty. And the last 2 years of that, just as a growing professional, I was constantly frustrated with how the business operated
Hmm.
and realized I had no power at the end of the day, at least at the role I was currently in, to make any change, although I tried. Mostly nobody was interested in hearing my opinions on how to fix things. And so finally, the day zero for me was I need to be doing something that fulfills me, that makes me happy, and I need to be able to control or have control over these very strong feelings I have about how to operate. I'm articulating it maybe fairly well right now, but then those feelings weren't as mature. I just knew that I wasn't happy and I needed to do something on my own. And so that led me that was day zero. That was day zero for me.
That's awesome. And what did you start?
Yeah. So I started with cashing in my 401k,
Taking the penalties.
taking the penalties because I had no money, young kid.
Hmm.
And then the next step was, what do I love? And although I had never owned a camera in my life, I loved photography. I loved art. So I went and bought a camera with that money, with a little bit of runway to not have to work, and started taking pictures of everyone, everywhere, all the time, ultimately. And that led to a business. That was the beginning of it. And I ended up starting a photography business focused on weddings,
Oh, wow.
which, yeah, which ended up being a really, out of the gate, really great opportunity. But it was all very trial and error. I had an aquatics background at the time, so I started another business, which we probably don't have time to get into, but it's a aquatics business that was focused on both teaching kids how to swim with a proprietary system I had built, and then also a educational program that I sold to school districts throughout Southern California on water safety.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a show that we produced and then sold to them and delivered. So that was the first 5 years or so is where all of my time went to those two. And then things developed into future businesses from there as well,
That's
which is real.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. It's funny. As you're talking about starting this 25 years ago and photography, my first thought was, okay, was that digital? Was that the digital transformation? And then I remembered, because I've been married for 25 years, and I remember
Okay.
at the end of
Congrats,
our
by the way.
wedding, thanks, our photographer handed us a bag of film.
Right.
She knew my wife through agency work and just said, listen, I'll shoot it, but then you can go find somebody to actually finish it. I don't want to
Yeah.
hold your photos hostage. I don't want to do any of that. I'll just give you all the raw film and you go do the thing. And it was so cool. So that's when I thought, nope, that was still film. Back in
Yeah.
99, you're still shooting film.
By the way, Stas, I was shooting film.
Yep.
I was shooting film. That was before the inflection point, the very real inflection point of digital media, digital showing up in cameras.
Yeah.
And almost overnight, the film lab, almost overnight, shutting down worldwide. It happened so quick.
Oh yeah. It's funny. My first business back in 85 was desktop publishing.
Okay.
So the death of setting type, physically setting type.
Mm,
When you went from metal letters in a frame,
right.
written upside down and backwards, to
Yep.
make the impression to flip over to straight to plate, straight to digital.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah, like that business
just
over with.
talking about it feels so archaic, doesn't it?
Yeah. But you know what? Still, I still appreciate like someone hands you a business card
Yeah.
and you can feel the high cotton. You can feel that it's a you get that, the tactile, and then it just evokes all those great memories. And you're like, you're a guy that cares about this.
I appreciate that.
And you get that instant connection where someone's like, all right, you understand this stuff.
Yeah, 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 totally. You know what that kind of reminds me of is the people in the film labs. I think they would describe the smell of chemicals in the film lab in the same way. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the smell of the chemicals. When we would go into a dark room and we would meticulously and carefully blend those chemicals in the paper to get the perfect exposure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
same way.
It's funny. I just got a whiff of it. It's amazing. I did. I did. Like rocking the tray back and forth to make sure
Right.
everything is right and then getting it up and hanging it. And you're in that red light and you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yes, yes, man.
So cool. Oh, it's
And
amazing.
on that topic, it perhaps it's a good segue into the as my entrepreneurialism advanced when film died and digital showed up. We all threw away our film cameras and moved to digital. But this really unanticipated thing happened where us that were doing this professionally, overnight, we now were not only the photographer, but now we were the lab too. So you had two businesses rolled into one,
Oh, interesting.
but the infrastructure of that business was not prepared to be the lab as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a really very painful, very stressful period of time for those of us that were doing volume. So I was doing, at that point, I'd grown the photography business. We had multiple shooters under our brand. We were doing 150 weddings a year. And we literally just could not keep up because the digital tools to develop digital media
Mm-hmm.
really didn't show up as fast as the digital media did. So
Right.
long story short, in trying to solve my own operational problem regarding that inflection point, led me to what I saw coming, which was going to be an epidemic of professional photographers needing a digital lab to service this new requirement. And so that led me into the launch of a business back in 2007, which is still active today, called Shoot.edit. And
Oh,
we were the
wow.
first digital media lab to the world for professional wedding photographers that were shooting digital media. And we got to use the power of the internet, which made the world flat, where
Mm-hmm.
you could just send your images to my company over the internet, and we would develop them, if you will. We would hand edit them using Adobe products and then
Mm-hmm.
deliver back to them on the internet.
Oh,
And
that's fabulous.
that business is what really challenged my business scale and operational maturity chops. And to something we talked about earlier, it was through a ton of failure that I learned a lot.
Well,
Uh,
tell me about one that you're willing to share because I'm sitting here thinking, wow, so you created the first real digital post-production house
yeah,
at scale.
yeah, that's right.
And I can only imagine the bandwidth because I remember Illustrator One, I remember Photoshop One from my old business. And they were powerful pieces of technology, but you needed to have all of the sort of analog ability and the eye to make it happen.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
now with AI and all of that stuff, it's do like the post production is a lot easier, of course.
uh-huh, yep.
But back then, you're trying to race the Indianapolis 500 in a Model T.
Yeah, I almost want to say in a go-kart.
Yeah. So tell me about one of those things where you were like, I think it's going to go this way, and the world said, no, it isn't.
Yeah. Oh man, there literally is probably 50 plus. But there's a big one I'd love to share with you, but I'll share just two very short, small, major failures. One of them was I did not understand what it meant to service B2B. And I didn't understand this concept of value proposition,
Hmm.
meaning we had a product and we would say to the customer, if you send us your images, we'll make them look exactly as you want them to look. And the concept here in terms of the failure is I didn't realize you cannot measure subjectivity. And this almost caused the business to fail as we hockey sticked in growth in the first year and a half. And here's what I mean by that. We promised we'll match your style. And I thought I was being smart by giving all of our customers direct access to their editors. And so we opened up, we basically did something that's very dumb. We merged our customer support call center with our editing team. And we said, well, we don't need customer support people. We'll just let the editors talk directly to our talkers. And so the editor would get on the phone and the photographer would say, make my images warm and crisp and make sure they sparkle, right? Or I want my images to be dark and moody, but I want them to pop. And we were like, this is perfect. And then the editors would be like, okay, great. I know what you want. I'll get to work. And Stas, it only took 3 weeks to realize this was a huge failure because you cannot measure adjectives.
That's right.
You cannot, which that concept began to permeate into all things scale, all things people, all things process, all things performance down the road. So that was probably one of my biggest failures early on because the business depended on the customer being happy about what we promised to deliver them. So that's one big failure. Another big failure was scaling technology. I wasn't a technologist then. I'm not a technologist now. But what I didn't understand is we were getting into the business of tech. And I didn't understand the infrastructure requirements to ultimately send and receive data, large voluminous amounts of data across the internet worldwide. I think we ended up serving 28 countries as we grew. So we had data coming in from all over the world, and we grew faster than I understood our infrastructure needs to do that. And so that caused tremendous amount of delays with customers. Of course, you get it. Customers are merciless. They have no patience. They don't care if you have problems in the business. All they care is you deliver what they paid for on time and accurately, right?
That's right.
So that was another of the 50 or plus failures. That was a big, huge sock in the eye that took us a while to figure out. And then maybe one other one I'll share with you, which was perhaps the most personally painful one for me. And that was being a micromanager. And I didn't know I was being a micromanager. But one day, at this point, we're now 10 years into the business and still experiencing great growth, but stress was high, happiness was low. Our employment churn was pretty significant. Our employee lifetime value is very, very low. And I just thought this is just part of building a disruptive, growing business until the chairman of our board sat me down one day and let me have it. And he said, Garrett, I'm telling you right now, if you don't stop micromanaging, you're going to crash and burn your business and your people. And that was the first time somebody actually used that term with me. And I didn't understand what it meant.
Oh, wow.
But what I came to learn was that the reason I was micromanaging is because I didn't understand what I wanted in a way that was clear to everybody else. So one of my blogs I wrote about a while back coined a thing called the management expectation gap. And what often leaders in businesses, founders, C-suite, executive management, whoever, they often think they're being very clear with their words. But often, usually, they're not as clear as they think they are. And they put out their direction and their vision audibly. And usually it's not written down. And then the recipients of that information get it and they all interpret it differently. And then they go out and work. And my problem was I wasn't being clear. Everybody thought I knew what I was doing because I'm the founder and the CEO. And so you just do your best. But ultimately, the output I was getting from my audible instructions was not matching what was in my head.
Right.
So I was constantly trying to control everybody to get the output that was in my head, but I wasn't being clear about it with my mouth. And I wasn't disciplined enough to put it in writing in a way that everybody could say back to me, yes, I'm clear about what you want and where we want to go.
Oh yeah, that's
And,
huge.
right.
And you are not alone, sir.
I know, man. I know. And so that failure is probably the top 3 of the 50 plus, because once I understood why I was living that way, then I was able to re-engineer my approach to clarity and my approach to communicating clearly about the direction of the business in both the macro and the micro.
Yeah, tell me about that, because we have a tool in EOS called the Vision Traction Organizer, right? Which is intended to grab the brain of the founder and say, all right, give me answers to these 8 questions, and then we can sort of hitch ourselves to you. Right? The core values of the company, the core focus. What are we going to do? What are we best at? That hedgehog concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? The 10-year target. What's the big, hairy, audacious goal? What's our North Star?
Yes.
Then we talk about a marketing strategy, right? The demographic, geographic, psychographic profile of the customer that we're going to be talking to.
Yeah.
Then boil it down for me in a 3-year picture.
Okay.
Tell me what's in your mind's eye with a little bit more detail, a revenue number, a profit number, a number of people, a couple of other major milestones. So, give me that vision in 5 questions, and then flip the page over and give me the traction portion of my 1-year plan. What do you want to accomplish this year? What can we talk about, right? Revenue, profit, measurables.
Yeah.
And then using a Stephen Covey construct of rocks, give me the quarterly rocks. Let's talk about the quarterly rocks. What are we going to do? What are the 3 to 7 main priorities for this company in this next 90-day period? And then to honor our visionaries that have 187 great ideas, 6 of them viable. We have a long-term issues list where we jot down all of the other ideas and say, we will get back to these. But let's all agree that the stuff we're working on is the stuff that is on our goals on the 1-year picture.
That's good.
And that allows us to then align an entire organization around a founder's vision, because that's their job. But tell me about your cadence, because I think that's the most important thing. Like just having the document and putting it in a binder and making it pretty, or putting it on a frame and then putting it on a shelf. So what?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you deploy?
Yeah. Let's see. So here's what I did. I started looking at the macro of the business and started dividing up all of the departments and sub-departments and divisions within the business, and started trying to figure out how do these all collectively add up to the intended output. And then once we defined all of that, I made sure that our leadership had buy-in about what we wanted. Once we had buy-in, then what we did is we began to document all of those things that we wanted, which are similar to the things that you were just sharing about the EOS approach. And then what we did is we sat down and defined what would govern our behavior in achieving those things. And so that ended up in the culmination of that was a core value playbook. Not only what do we believe in, but what is going to drive our behavior? What governs how we act? What governs our decisions rights? That was a big part of the beginning there. And then lastly, inputting an accountability structure where everybody would be accountable for what they're responsible to do based on the published and documented goals. Of course, integrated into that are project management systems so that you can have rails and deadlines move mountains. So making sure that there are always milestones that have a date assigned to them. But then I would say the one thing, after getting some mileage under our belt, the one thing that at least was missing for my organization was the micro. And what I began to see once we had a clear map across all functions of the business and all leaders across the business, we were all united. What I began to see is each function, each department would, even though we had the same values, they would execute in the micro differently. And I began to see some having success and a success repeatedly. And I began to see mostly many others failing. And that flipped on a light bulb for a memory I had years ago from a childhood mentor. And he taught me, you can only build as high as you dig deep. And he showed me a picture of a hole in the ground that was about 13 stories for when they were getting ready to build a skyscraper. And he said, do you see all of the meticulous rebar and connectivity in the foundation of this building they're about ready to build? And I was like, yeah. And he pointed out everything. And he said, well, that is your micro infrastructure. And to the degree that you get that right, will be the degree to which you can really build high and sustain and not topple. And going back to the part that was missing for me was process, because everybody had their own approach to what process looked like. And so our mileage would vary throughout the business in terms of output. And so that was the final piece, is focusing on building a framework that enabled process to be unified in terms of our approach to building process and still tied into the macro output and the accountability structures. And as a result, because now we had 360 degrees of governance, I was able to no longer micromanage because the governance managed for us. And because we all agreed we would own through accountability, then there was that too. And that was, at the end of the day, that's how it all came together, Stas.
I love it. I love it. I'm in my head, I'm like nodding, like, of course, yes, this makes sense. This makes sense. It's what I live and breathe every day.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Because vision without traction is hallucination. Like, you can have this great vision, and if you don't have the process and the people to actually make the thing go, it'll never go.
True.
But one of the things that I really want to dig into, you talked about a playbook.
Yeah.
Especially tying into core values. Can you unpack that for me? Like, give me an example. How does that show up?
Yeah, totally. So I found that everybody had different beliefs about what good and bad behavior was. Everybody had different beliefs about how and when to make decisions and who makes decisions. And everybody had different beliefs. Oh, there were these also negative traits that just come with people in general, like lying or fear. And so I wanted to create a safe place for people. But by the way, let me back up. One of my epiphanies in building the business we're talking about, Shoot.edit, was, wow, most of us are putting in anywhere between 10 and, in my case, 15 hours a day. So I was like, we're all mostly working in our life, and we're spending the majority of our life around people we work with. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to invest in these people, pay them money, and they're going to contribute between 10 and 15 hours a day, then I think it behooves all of us to be in a culture and an environment where we are satisfied and we feel mostly good and we are happy and we're productive as a result of all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that led to the building of the playbook. And so some examples of the playbook are, we agreed to empower everybody with precise steps to say no matter who you are, no matter what role you have. Somebody comes to you, you're allowed to say no for these reasons. Another one was a term we came up with called co-lead, co-follow, because one thing I value, especially now, is when you purpose to hire great people, they come with a ton of smarts, either gained through working in the business or prior, or both. And I think it's important to not have status trump people that are perhaps that Japanese term in the Genba, the place where value is created.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to be able to culturally, in a way that we value, be mentored by a young kid that just started as an intern, but is super smart in areas that I'm really dumb.
That's
And
brilliant.
I want to make sure that there's provision for that in the business. Another one, just blatantly, we said, do not lie. You, in our business, in our culture, lying is bad and we won't tolerate it. And so I think we came up with 25 different core values that we all really, at that time, that group we assembled, that we all really wanted to lean into and live by, not just have words on the wall, but we would evaluate every quarter. And then, of course, when we would on-ramp every employee, they would go through on-ramping, which introduced them to all of our values. And they would hear those values from leaders, from fellow cohorts, et cetera.
That's awesome. Well, then you walk into a situation, you walk into a company where everybody is right for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's funny. I always give the example whenever we're going through a core values exercise. I always say the CFO of Enron and the CFO of the SPCA could have been roommates at work, right?
Uh-huh.
Similar size P&Ls, similar size, responsibilities, similar skills,
Yep.
right? Completely interchangeable jobs, not interchangeable companies, right?
Right.
One was all about whatever Enron was about. The other one's about kittens and puppies, right? So you could be the best CFO in the world, but if you don't care about kittens and puppies, you shouldn't work for the SPCA.
That's right, man.
It's really awesome. I have a client and he said, because our core values are supposed to attract as well as repel.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And his core values, he's a veteran run organization. His core values are honor, courage, and commitment. It's like, if these resonate for you, you're going to be one of our guys. If these scare you, please go no further in the hiring process. Because if you're just a guy that wants to sit on a bucket and swing a hammer only when the supervisor is watching, you will last exactly one shift at that place.
Yeah.
Because the peer accountability is unbelievable. The accountability is not top down. The accountability is lateral, because everybody lives by the core values and they look side to side and go, what are you doing, man?
That's right. It reminds me of Amazon with the extra mile. At least they paved the way for this. I think it's Amazon, where they pay you to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they spot people out of the gate that are not a good fit. They're like, hey, we want to offer you $3,000 to leave today.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's funny when you're in a company that's that large, it gets to the point where you can use actuary science. You just go through the whole thing. You can be very, very cold and calculating. Be like, this is going to cost us $8,000 in productivity and $5,000 in blah, 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 blah. If I offer the guy $3,000, I'm up 10. Yes, please. All day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And probably everybody's winning on that gig.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The guy's like, I just got fired. I just got $3,000. Like, you have no idea.
Exactly.
This is wonderful for you and for them.
That's right. And Amazon's sweet. We just saved $25,000.
But the thing is, if you're always looking for that two-sided win, it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Right? I do agree with that.
That's great. So you figured out you were a micromanager. You built out a whole slew of systems to stop being a micromanager, to now have all of these sort of self-motivated, well-aligned teams executing really, really well on a set of disciplines that you also have created. This sounds a little bit like the genesis of the current business, the other business that you're in right now.
Oh, Clarity Ops.
Right. I mean, doesn't it? Yeah. One had to have influenced the other.
Yeah. Stusk, you're spot on. The analogy that comes to mind for me is how AWS was birthed. Amazon was innovating so drastically, they had to build their own tools because the tools they needed to accomplish their big, hairy, audacious goals did not exist.
Right.
Right? You know the story. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And then after they built out all of these tools and they were operating at scale successfully, Jasky shows up and says to Bezos, hey, dude, I actually think businesses could really benefit from these tools that we've built that do not exist in the marketplace. And AWS took off. And so really that was the aha moment for me accidentally, as 17 years in scaling Shoot.edit and becoming vertically integrated. I was like, okay, the reason I built these tools is because I could not find them in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that if these tools could be introduced to fellow business owners, this would save them a tremendous amount of stress, duress, cost, loss, and simultaneously could help them scale in perpetuity repeatedly, and then simultaneously get all of the culture benefits. Let's assume the profits coming with that scale and growth, but then simultaneously get all of the cultural benefits that hold the business together by lowering stress, increasing happiness, extending your employee lifetime values. And then you get it, all of the great things that come as a result of that. That's why ClarityOps was launched.
That's awesome. And the funny thing is the net impact on enterprise value, when you talk about, you said that your target market is $5 million of recurring revenue, right? A company that's running $5 million of net recurring revenue with an established playbook that then can obsolete the CEO is a tremendously valuable enterprise. Because when you say, listen, if I get hit by a bus, I have people, accountability, process.
That's right. That is right, dude.
Yeah.
Stas, you're spot on.
Well, you're creating a tremendous amount of wealth for everybody that's getting involved with you, because it makes them bulletproof.
It does. 100%. In addition to that one, which is huge, by the way, I think you and I probably, most CEOs don't want to get hit by a bus.
Right.
They're either looking for a great exit or they want to grow their business into this very mature, successful entity. Mm-hmm. And so the other things that come along with it is not only great insurance, but also the receiving back of their RAM and their strength and their energy and their time to advance the business 10x. Mm-hmm. And this is my hypothesis, and I really believe it, most businesses operate in chaos, not because they want to, they just don't know any better. And I think most businesses just figure operating in chaos is what you do. That's just how it goes.
Yes.
Right? But if you can have breakthrough and have operational frameworks that eliminate the chaos, restore order, now the senior leaders move from being a reactive leadership team to constantly putting out fires and solving problems that came as a result of bad infrastructure and chaos. And you get to move into a proactive mindset, a proactive state of energy, where your time is now focused on solutions, because all those problems mostly go away because you have sound governance.
Yeah, everything gets solved at a lower level. It's funny, I had a mentor. I was probably, I had to be 23 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting at the end of this row of desks, and my CEO is over there, maybe 30 feet away, and he has a glass-walled office. And this guy was brilliant. And he walks out of his office one day and kind of sits down on my desk, and he's, so, how's it going? I'm like, I got 3 phones going, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Why? And he said, so you want to be a fireman when you grow up? I said, no. Why? He goes, well, because you're putting out a lot of fires. I'm like, yeah, but someone's got to put the fires out. He goes, yeah, but the thing is, the fires that are burning are houses that you built.
Right.
Like,
how about that?
So he kind of 3 little pygmy me. He goes, why don't we start building some houses out of brick instead of straw?
Yeah, man.
And I was like, oh, son of a gun, you're right. Because it's easy and quick to build a house out of straw.
It sure is.
Right? You get a bunch of straw, you get a bunch of mud, you get a bunch of whatever, and you're out of the weather. But that thing catches fire instantly. Yeah. It takes a long time to build something out of brick, but once you build it right, it's built once and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Or to your point there, if you have a framework like EOS, for example, or series of tools and frameworks, you can get there fast because you don't have to you don't have to start from scratch and invent something. And typically business owners don't have the runway to invent frameworks to this stuff. And so what most business owners do is they go after the sales and they hope that the revenue will be bigger and better than the problems creating that revenue creates.
And hope is, of course, a very sound business strategy.
The stats are against that hope because 9 out of 10 businesses fail over the course of 10 years, right?
That's right.
We know this. We know this. And that is part of my goal, is to make a dent in that stat.
I love it. I love it, man. We're on the same journey. Let's go out there and help as many people as possible.
Heck yeah, Stas.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your tools. Would it be okay if one of the 3 subscribers to this podcast that listens to this episode and says, I've got some process issues. I'd really love to see if I can get in touch with Garrett. Would it be okay if I just put all of your info in the notes of the podcast?
That would be amazing. That'd be awesome, Stas. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Man, it is so great to meet someone that you're so aligned with. Like everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, seen it work.
Likewise, it feels good, Yeah. We might be biased, but we tend to think we're right. I think there's enough proof in the pudding.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of proof that we always say that a CEO or a founder or a leadership team member needs 3 things. They need an operating system, they need a coach, and they need a peer group. An operating system for the very reason that you said, that they can't invent their own, and why you should do the thing that other people are doing. So you have that sort of common language. A peer group, because it's lonely at the top. And sometimes the only people you can talk to are other CEOs, which is why actually the Founders Dinner podcast is named the Founders Dinner, because I run a Founders Dinner, an actual dinner in Buffalo.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. With friends that are all CEOs.
Love it.
And the rules are you got to either run it or own it.
Okay.
And we get together and we drink a lot of wine and we tell a lot of stories, and lots of friendships are made and lots of help is doled out.
Yeah.
And then the third one is you need a coach, because you can't see yourself playing the game. So you need someone that can call you on your stuff and hold you accountable and make you a better version of you. And if you have those 3 elements.
I love that. You can't see yourself playing the game. I love that.
Listen, Jordan got coached to his very last basket.
Yes, man.
And I'm sure
he valued it.
That's why he was the best. And I'm sure when he got off of that court, I'm sure whoever the coach was like, yeah, you know what? Like, you're still you're still doing that thing. He was like, I don't care. I'm done.
Right. It reminds me, I have a buddy in college say something similar to your axiom there, which is the eye cannot see itself. And you need the right people, no matter what level you're at, holding up a mirror so you can see. And then hopefully you have the heart to accept criticism and constructive feedback and pivot when you need to and change when you need to.
That's so hard. I
know, man.
It is so hard, because sometimes someone just puts their thumb on a bruise, not because they meant to, because they didn't see it. And you're like, oh, all right.
Yes, man.
But, growth is never comfortable.
No. And it never, and I think that's what sets apart those that succeed from often those that don't. Having the wherewithal to face those uncomfortable truths and change them in the right direction.
Well said. That's like putting a tidy little bow on our conversation.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, sharing your time, your enthusiasm. And I'd say that concludes this week's episode of the Founders Dinner podcast. For those looking to connect with Garrett, his link is going to be in the description. And this is Stas Bolinevsky signing off, and hope to see you all next week. Garrett, thank you so much.
Stas, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
That was awesome.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Once again, we've journeyed through the inspiring and challenging world of entrepreneurship with Stas Balanevsky, uncovering stories that illuminate the resilience and adaptability at the heart of success. Each narrative shared today is a testament to the unyielding spirit of our entrepreneurial guests, providing lessons in courage and determination. We hope these stories have not only entertained, but also inspired you. Whether you're taking the first steps in your entrepreneurial journey or are a seasoned leader in the business world, Founders Dinner is more than just a podcast. It's a community of learning, inspiration, and connection. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful episodes and join our vibrant LinkedIn community to continue the conversation, share experiences, and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. Until next time, keep embracing the entrepreneurial journey. This is Stas Balanevsky, thanking you for being a part of the Founders Dinner family. See you at the next dinner.